Hi. So I was recently asked to explain why the Orthodox Church is okay with IUI but not IVF. And before I get into that, I first wanted to address something that's consistent among Orthodox documents that I found. So I was recently sent the Holy Synod of the Church of Greece Bioethics Committee document, which is a fantastic document. I am so grateful for the work that they're doing over there to address these issues. And this document states she, the church, could accept within the spirit of her dispensation fertilization techniques that do not involve surplus embryos or include any form of donation or embryo destruction. She could also accept assisting the reproduction procedure by using only the parent's gametes and fertilizing as many embryos as will be implanted. So this seems to be a common exception, not among Roman Catholics, but among Orthodoxy, that IVF is okay if there are no excess embryos. So first, they don't all implant. All of the embryonic children that we're creating, that we plan on transferring, they will not all implant. So we're still creating multiple children in the hopes that one of them will survive the transfer process. And a lot of people will argue, like, oh, what if only one is fertilized at a time? One egg is fertilized at a time and transferred at a time. Like, would this be okay? There's no leftovers. So here's what I have to say about fertilizing one at a time. It's rare to create only one embryonic human person at a time because the procedure is so expensive. Embryologists want to up the odds of implantation, so they fertilize as many eggs as possible at a time. There are some clinics who will do a natural cycle approach, which fertilizes the woman's single ovulated egg each month, but this is rare. And further, even if we're creating one embryo at a time, there's no guarantee that person will transfer and implant successfully. So this created child was intentionally and unnaturally created to be potentially disposable. I just saw a post where a couple did IVF and she said they did everything right. She was very upset. They did everything right. They had this perfect embryo that was genetically tested, and they still had their 8th miscarriage. So I know part of this is because women still have the underlying health issues that keep them from getting pregnant naturally in the first place, because that's what IVF does. It masks health issues instead of treats them. But yeah, so this one life is also, it's still subject to the unnatural nature of the petri dish that can be harsh to developing embryos, as this environment does not perfectly mimic the natural conception environment. This embryo will still also undergo pre-implantation screenings to determine if he or she is worthy of transfer, so we're still devaluing a unique person's life, whether one embryo or 10 are created. Also, there are still the issues of separating the unitive and the procreative nature of the conjugal act and placing the literal creation of the embryonic human person, the combining of sperm and egg, in the hands of a third party. So even if only one embryo is created at a time, the IVF process still doesn't assist the natural conception process, but rather completely bypasses it. And it still uncouples procreation to a degree that falls well short of the mark. IVF facilitates couples creating children artificially, as I've said, while bypassing that aspect of begetting that God commands us to be fruitful and multiply, a command which is certainly not a license from the Creator to allow us to create children by any means possible. Husband and wife, in the reflection of Christ in the church, reflect the love of Christ for his creation, and God doesn't treat any of us as disposable, so we should not be treating any of our children as disposable, but this is unfortunately the case in the IVF process, even if only one is created at a time. We are still playing trial and error with that one full person, and participants are then responsible, unfortunately, for this death, if it occurs, of that one full person. Not intentionally responsible. They're not going into it because they want their child to die, but this is a blame which never falls on couples participating in the co-creation process that God conducts within the mysterious sanctuary of the mother's body. So natural restorative procedures to restore overall health while providing a better chance of natural conception should be promoted. So now on to IVF and IUI. So in the Russian document, The Basis of the Social Concept of the Russian Orthodox Church, it states, among the admissible means of medical aid may be an artificial insemination by the husband's germ cells, since it does not violate the integrity of the marital union and does not differ basically from the natural conception and takes place in the context of marital relations. The Greek document that I mentioned also talks about artificial insemination with the husband's sperm as well. So these procedures, like intrauterine insemination and gamete intrafallopian transfer, still allow children to be conceived in the natural conception process through the use of perforated condoms as opposed to masturbation, which is the case in IVF. Even though there's still a degree of separation, as these children are still not, conceived directly inside the conjugal act, and a third party is still a key element in the miracle of bringing children into existence that is ideally reserved for the intimate union of husband and wife. IUI involves sperm being directly inserted into the uterus to increase the chances of implantation, and GIFT is when egg are extracted and the best sperm are then chosen and mixed outside of the body and then placed directly into the fallopian tube where fertilization can occur. So with GIFT, however, women are still required to submit to the process and possible harms of egg extraction. I've written a lot about this. And the best sperm are chosen and mixed with the eggs before insertion, which is not a normal process, which is not a natural process, And that's the case with IUI as well. The sperm are washed, and the best ones are chosen. And also with GIFT, since multiple eggs are placed in each fallopian tube, this can result in multiple eggs being fertilized that may not implant. So a possible workaround to this may include only placing one egg in one fallopian tube at a time. So since both of these require the choosing of the best sperm, restorative reproductive medicine physician Dr. Naomi Whitaker stated that upon reviewing studies conducted on IUI and IVF, there's no data to suggest that IUI, IVF, or IVF with previously genetically screened embryos is better for achieving pregnancy than timed intercourse. This is, of course, after the one's determined genetically unviable or discarded. That's for IVF. Also, along with all of the issues that come with IVF, the washing of sperm, which is part of the IUI and IVF processes, can actually lead to sperm damage that causes infertility, pregnancy loss, and genetic abnormalities in children. So, before IUI and GIFT are considered, infertile couples must look to restorative procedures. So, I know the church is more lenient with IUI and GIFT, so these procedures allow for more individual pastoral discretion, since they facilitate natural processes and assist the marital act instead of bypassing it through unnatural conception in petri dishes, even though, as I've said, they still don't honor the unitive and procreative nature of the conjugal act, and the intentionality of the procedures still show, to perhaps a lesser degree than IVF, an insistence on our own will. But these medical interventions can possibly be considered moral acts if no donor gametes are used, and perforated condoms are used to allow collection within the marital act. If you use perforated condoms for IVF, a third party would still be fashioning your child in a lab as opposed to it happening naturally in the mother, which is what happens with GIFT and IUI. So GIFT and IUI more so assist the natural conception process, and these treatments don't call for the creation of embryos outside of the body, which is, I believe, the main point with Orthodoxy. There are no excess embryos as IVF calls for. And Roman Catholicism also doesn't have an official ruling on IUI and GIFT for these same reasons. Some will argue that these procedures replace the conjugal act, and so it violates natural law, and then others will say, oh, it's collected through illicit means, through perforated condoms. So the marital act remains intact, and these procedures just help assist fertilization without removing the conjugal act. So, yeah, that's just a brief overview of what the different procedures are and the church's teachings on them.